It is no surprise that the Oscar-winning actor was destined to be an amazing talent. Born Nicholas Kim Coppola, the movies were in his blood. It all started with his great-grandfather Coppola, who lived above and owned a movie theater during the 1920s. He imported movies from Italy for the Italian immigrants in the neighborhood. The next generation brought Nicholas's grandfather, who was an Oscar-winning musical score composer. After that came famous Uncle Francis, and then his daughter, Sophia, both Oscar-winning directors. But for Nicholas, it's not just a case of working in the family business. With one Oscar already under his belt, this actor's talent runs so deep that he can play any genre, any time period, any character, and succeed.
I have scripts that come to me that are from across the board. There are comedies and actioners and dramatic films, and that's really where I wanted to be. I wanted to have the luxury, because I'm kind of a complicated guy.
On January the 7th, 1964, Joy Vogelsang and August Coppola welcomed their third son into the world in Long Beach, California. Joy was a celebrated dancer and choreographer, while August was a comparative literature professor who also taught film. Nicholas actually compared his father to legendary screen actor Sean Connery.
I grew up with my father, who's a man who's very intimidating to be around, because he has that sort of larger-than-life presence, like he's going to start conducting Beethoven at any minute, and he looks like Sean's.
Unfortunately, Nicholas's parents divorced when he was only 12. His mother, Joy, was a very creative woman, but she was also a depressive and found herself in and out of hospitals, leaving Nick plenty of time to be on his own. He took refuge in his collection of comic book heroes and movies.
I think whenever the family structure does not provide a lot of care for a young person, the young person is going to find a way to soothe. This can take the form of going into a fantasy world of comic books or movies where the hero wins and the villain is punished. A very safe place where the young person can find nurturing and soothing.
You know, I loved film, I loved movies. I was trying to find a way into the TV set when I was 6 years old, and then when I was 14 I discovered James Dean in East of Eden, and that really connected me with film acting. It made it clear to me that this was something, you know, that can really move people.
As a teenager, he'd already found his calling. During his 15th year, Nicholas enrolled in San Francisco's American Conservatory Theatre. At just 17, Nicholas decided to incur his father's wrath and drop out of school. He decided school was over, acting just couldn't wait a minute longer. At first, the famous Coppola name did the trick, and he landed a bit part in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. But he was extremely upset when most of it landed on the cutting room floor. Then, in 1983, Nicholas helped his Uncle Francis out with the auditions for Rumblefish. Well, he was so good at rehearsing opposite the other actors that he himself landed the part of Smokey. As he says, though, it wasn't a cakewalk.
Fear, discomfort, not knowing what to do, out of my element.
He got another part the same year for a teen comedy called Valley Girl, and this time it was pure luck, no nepotism involved. What happened was a casting agent was considering people for the part of the punk rocker Randy in the film, and she stumbled upon Nick Cage's picture and thought, this is the guy for the job. He landed the role, and there was no looking back. It was his big break. No longer wanting to ride on the coattails of his famous family name, he officially changed his name to Cage.
Acting for me has kept me balanced. I've acted because, I needed to. It was a survival thing. It channeled a lot of stuff, that I had as a young man.
In 1986, Uncle Francis called upon his talented nephew again for the comedy period piece, Peggy Sue Got Married. Coppola had to defend the decision to cast his nephew to studio execs, but it paid off. The movie did get considerable attention for the young actor, particularly from singer-actress Cher, who persuaded producers to cast him opposite her in the hit comedy Moonstruck.
Okay, Moonstruck. Scary, fun, exploring. Moonstruck certainly was my sort of introduction into the romantic genre.
The film was a smash hit. Nicholas won a Golden Globe and Cher won the Oscar that year.
The unique actor also caught the attention of the talented directors, the Coen brothers, who decided to cast him as a very quirky character in their comedy Raising Arizona. Nicholas, in order to interpret the role, channeled a cartoon character.
Woody Woodpecker is a character that has brought me a lot of laughs as a child, and I thought it was interesting to model this H.I. McDonough in Raising Arizona after Woody Woodpecker's personality. It was very liberating, a liberating chance to not try to be so natural, not try to be so real, to break free.
Coming up, Cage opens his heart to a young Patricia Arquette.
Talking with Patricia for just a couple of hours, the 23-year-old decided there and then to propose marriage. He thought he just found his soulmate. 1987, he happened to be at Cantor's, the famous Hollywood all-night delicatessen, and he bumped into 19-year-old stunning and up-and-coming actress Patricia Arquette, and the two of them had a lot in common, both coming from Hollywood dynasties. Talking with Patricia for just a couple of hours, the 23-year-old decided there and then to propose marriage. He thought he just found his soulmate. Well, Patricia was not convinced and was actually a bit spooked, and she asked him to come up with a list of impossible, virtually impossible things that he had to do before she would say yes. Well, she got even more spooked when he actually started to produce some of those things. So she turned him down. Marriage would have to wait till a bit later on another chance encounter. In 1990, the 26-year-old starred in the dark, twisted drama Wild at Heart. Well, David Lynch, the movie's director, was so impressed by his intensity and talent, he called him the jazz musician of all actors. The new role opposite Laura Dern was perfect for Nicholas because he'd always been absolutely obsessed with Elvis and had his own collection of Elvis memorabilia. Again, it was an example of how he used his own personal experience and passion to really get into the role.
I had looked to artists, other artists, and what they had done, and I thought, well, why can't that be done with acting? I thought, well, I'm going to take Elvis and I'm going to put my own interpretation on it.
Nicholas had been paired with a number of gorgeous Hollywood women over the years, including Uma Thurman, but it wasn't until he was 28 that he met a woman who really changed his life completely. Model actress Christina Fulton. They had a child together, Weston Coppola Cage. And fatherhood, of course, was very significant, but it also brought around a kind of change in the tone of his next few roles.
This was a change for me. I called it my Sunshine Trilogy. It started with Honeymoon in Vegas, and Guardian Test was one of them, and then now this. It happened to you. I wanted to change for a while. I'd done enough of the sort of outlaw, dark characters, and people were starting to think that I really was crazy or an outlaw. And I thought, no, you got this wrong. I'm acting. I'm going to show you that I can act, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play a very normal, good guy.
But in his real life, things weren't so good. He broke up with Christina, although they did try to keep amicable because of their son. But in his movie life, Nicholas recognised that the kind of roles he was taking, which were pretty light-hearted at the time, did help him to stay positive.
It was a long road because to get where I am now, I had to go through some changes. There were some times, some pretty lean times, and luckily I had comedy to draw on. I had neglected the instinct, my natural instinct to be funny, because I had idols like James Dean and Marlon Brando, and so I was trying to do these sort of angst-ridden characters. Well, at some point people got tired of that, and then I had to switch gears and reach down and pull up, the comedy capability, and I think that got things going again.
With the new responsibility of a child, Nick did turn his life around quite a bit and accepted his responsibilities seriously. He stopped some of the hell-raising, he stopped smoking, he stopped his fast racing, his driving. He did, however, keep some of his passions, including his collection of exotic cars.
Besides the personal reasons for making popular feel-good movies, Nicholas saw them as long-term investments for his career.
I realized at a certain point that it is called show business, you know, and I know that I can get movies made if my movies sell. Right now I'm about to make a movie called Leaving Las Vegas, which is a little movie. But because I'm going to do it, I can get it financed, and it's an art film, which I'm really looking forward to doing.
Leaving Las Vegas was a huge departure from the comedies Nicholas had been focusing on for the last few years.
For me, the joy of acting is to keep changing not only characters, but also styles, genres.
With his usual veracity, he puts everything into his performance of the depressed, suicidal, alcoholic character, fueling his own anguish to really portray this character with an extraordinary intensity.
Leaving Las Vegas was another growing experience for me. It was, I think, a seminal film in my career, in that everything came into focus with Leaving Las Vegas.
Everything also came into focus for the Academy of Motion Pictures when Nicholas won the Best Actor Oscar for the role. He had a myriad of reactions to his win.
But it was important to me because I grew up in a family where, you know, other people in my family had Academy Awards, and so when I got it, and it's impossible, I don't care who you are, to not get caught up in it, you know, it was like this validation where I could say, well, okay guys, let's talk, you know. I felt it was important to me in a family way.
And Nicholas's family had just got bigger. One spring afternoon, he went to his favourite haunt in Hollywood, Cantor's Deli, again. And who should he bump into? As if fate had intertwined, it was Patricia Arquette. Now, by this time, both of their careers were well established, and each of them had a son. They got on like a house on fire once again, and this time, after 2 weeks, it was Patricia who proposed. They got married on her birthday in April 1995, and Patricia was his date for Oscar night.
Patricia was very happy that night for me, and I was happy that she was there.
Nicholas's next film was another departure for him. In 1996, he became an action hero in The Rock.
I think The Rock was a turning point. That was an interesting time in my life, really, when I think those two pictures really encapsulated where I wanted to go with my work in general. The dichotomy, if you will, between the action and the in-depth character analysis tone poem that is Leaving Las Vegas.
Leading a colossal blockbuster was new territory for the quirky actor.
Well, it's a very daunting feeling when someone says you're going to carry a $70 million movie. You know, I figured that with Jerry Bruckheimer and Michael Bay, I'd be able to create a character and do the action movie on my terms, which was not to play a steroid guy or a robot, but somebody with, you know, average but good qualities that can, you know, rise above the obstacles.